All right, it's Eric Franson and Ajay Salveson here on the Full Court Press. Now joining us from The Athletic. He's an NFL draft analyst and does a great work. You can find it on theathletic.com. It is Dane Brugler joining us here. Dane, thanks for your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, I know there's a lot to pick through in this regard to the NFL draft, one of the more unique ones for obvious reasons in NFL history. Let's start from the top. The fact that this NFL draft is going to be held virtual and on time, what is your personal opinion, personal thoughts on that?
Well, I think initially when all this started happening, my initial thought was, let's push it back. Without having the pro days, without having these 30 visits, the workouts, the chances for these players to go to team facilities, my first reaction was, let's push it back. There's really no reason why we need to rush this. But then as time went on and it became, reality that we probably won't have a normalcy to our lives for the foreseeable future, at least for a few months. It just didn't make sense to move it back when even if you move it back a month, we probably won't be able to have workouts or team visits or pro days or anything like that. So if you can't find a way to fit those things in, then you might as well keep the draft as is. Whether it's the NFL trying to capitalize as the only show in town, or the rainbow version of that is it's giving us some type of sports in a world where there's currently no sports. So it could be a positive, and so that's kind of how I'm looking at it. It's going to be tough from a logistics standpoint when you talk about these teams being in different spots, trying to be on the same page, be organized. There's a potential for some type of disaster there when you're talking about technology and people's homes and teams trying to coordinate everything, especially the teams that Bill Belichick and the Ravens and the good drafting teams will be fine. But teams that have a new front office, maybe just had some turnover, first-year general manager, whatever it is, communication is going to be key and something that might not be worked out yet. So there is a potential for some disaster here. But all things considered, I think I don't blame the NFL for bringing or keeping the draft on schedule and playing it out the best we can.
Dane, I don't know if you can classify this by any specific player, but maybe it's type of player or groups of players. Who was impacted the perhaps the worst, not being able to have a pro day on their campus?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's certainly part of the narrative of this draft is it's unprecedented. It's just different than we usually do things, and the NFL scouts, the whole process is a routine, and when you break out of that routine, things change. And I think especially when you talk about these quarterbacks, a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, he doesn't have his pro day. The medical rechecks are very different. We had the combine, thankfully, where each team or each player that was at the combine had a chance to go through the medical process. So we have medicals, but those are from over a month ago now. So how do teams view Tua and their risk appetite for a player that's struggled to stay healthy? And if we had the 30 visits, if we had the pro day, would that change your opinion at all? It's hard to say. There are some players, I think of A.J. Epinesa from Iowa, who basically had a disaster combine in terms of the way he worked out, the numbers that he put up. At 275 pounds, 6'5", 275, he was over 5 in the 40-yard dash. The rest of his drills did not go well. He doesn't have a pro day to improve those numbers. So next to his card will be 5.04 for his 40-yard dash instead of getting that to in the 4.8s, which I'm sure he would have done at the pro day. A guy like Jedrick Wills from Alabama, who has been a right tackle his entire life, high school, college, only a right tackle. I think he's the best tackle in this draft. But questions about can he move over to left tackle? We don't even have the chance for, if I'm a team, I can't send my offensive line coach to go work him out one-on-one and just line him up as a left tackle. See, muscle memory-wise and just, left-handed, right-handed, can he make that transition? I can't even have my offensive line coach, tell me his opinion on that because of this. So I think several players have been affected. We have all the tape. We have a lot of information. There's still value to be gained from pro days and these visits.
Do you think guys let I'm thinking specifically or closer to home here for us at Utah State University, where there's going to be a lot of attention that Jordan Love was going to have a certain gravity about him. People were going to come and check him out. But there are other players on that roster that would have been able to get some extra looks because just by their very nature, they were going to be in the building. There's some guys on the fringe that are really going to be hurt because of these pro days didn't happen.
Sure, and that's definitely part of it. There are times where scouts team, they'll go to a pro day to watch someone specific, and all of a sudden someone else jumps out at them. That happens all the time. And, listening to Joe Burrow, he was distraught over not having the pro day. And it wasn't because he needs it. He's going number one overall. He was disappointed for all of his teammates because he knew the crowd that, LSU always gets, but especially with Joe Burrow planning to throw at the pro day. And he understands what that would have meant for, the guys he would have been throwing to, Stephen Sullivan or Derek Dillon or Justin Jefferson, some of these guys. But unfortunately, without that, it's an opportunity that's taken away. And the same thing would have been true with Jordan Love, whether that would have helped, a Mariner or, even if someone that he wasn't throwing to, someone on the defensive side of the ball still would have got bodies to the pro day. And it would, that's all you can ask for. If you're, one of these fringe draftable guys or fringe, even getting a shot type of guy, you just need eyes. You need eyeballs on you, and that's your shot. Make the most of it and see what happens. So it is unfortunate. That's I think one of those lingering effects that we don't talk about enough as one of the disadvantages for these players that didn't get a chance to go to the combine. And the biggest thing that's going to hurt them is not with no medicals. That's where the 30 visits, that's a big part. Usually every year we have 35-ish non-combine guys get drafted every year. This year it might be single digits. And the biggest reason is because we don't have updated medical information like we would in a normal process, because a lot of non-combine guys make up some of those 30 visits where teams can perform the medical process at their own facility. So it's part of the process that unfortunately is going to hurt some of the lesser known players.
New England Patriots head coach Bill Belichick on a conference call today said, quote, in regard to the QB draft class, it's one of the more interesting groups and probably one that has decent depth to it. I know there's one specific quarterback we're focused on here in Cache Valley, but what are your thoughts overall on the QB class for 2020 in the NFL draft?
Definitely interesting, and I think there's something for everybody, depending on what you want. And it's really interesting to see how. Obviously, Joe Burrow, he's going 99.9% sure that is going to happen. It'd be a complete shock if it doesn't. And then Tua is a wild card. We just kind of touched on him, how just the medicals, not every team has the appetite for risk for a player like that. Justin Herbert is a high floor player that looks great on paper, yet something just seems to be missing in his evaluation that you're concerned about. Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, total polar opposites here. Jacob Eason's your big, strong-arm quarterback who, a few minor questions about his maturity. And then you have Jake Fromm, who is undersized, doesn't have a huge arm, not a great athlete, but the football IQ, X's and O's wise, the accuracy off the charts. And so just very, very opposite. I'm very intrigued by Anthony Gordon from Washington State. He's taking that Gardner Minshew path to the NFL, 1 year as a starter, but how did he do outside of Leach's system? We don't really have a sample size for that. Minshew has done fairly well, much better than people thought in Jacksonville, but can Anthony Gordon do the same thing? James Morgan's one of my favorite day 3 quarterback targets from FIU. James Luton from Oregon State turned himself into a draftable player. I think he's going to come off the board somewhere on day 3. And then there's a bunch of borderline guys. Cole McDonald from Hawaii, Nate Stanley, Iowa, Lewerke from Michigan State, Stephen Montez from Colorado. So I think that this quarterback class has a little bit of something for everybody. And even in every round, there's a guy you could look towards as someone with promise and someone that you can see making it.
Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he's an NFL draft analyst, joins us here on the Full Court Press. Dane, Jordan Love specifically, you have your ears close to the train tracks. You know and see what's going on. You hear what's going on. What are NFL scouts' thoughts on Jordan Love, worries, concerns, and so forth?
I keep coming back to how fascinating it is. If we switched his 2018 and 2019 seasons, if we did that and he's coming off a year where he had a 32-6 touchdown interception ratio, and he played. He also had 7 rushing scores. We don't talk enough about that too. He didn't have any this past year. We don't talk enough about, just how interesting it would be if he had that season in 2019 and not 2018. But instead, he loses all of his. The coaching staff is gone. Only one returning starter on offense. You could tell how much he was pressing because he felt like he needed to with the talent around him. He felt like he needed to with all NFL eyes on him. Being already, he was projected as a first rounder in the summer. So, I think that's part of the equation here. And, talking to people around the league, I get a lot of the same thing is we really like him. I just have yet to hear someone say we love him. And that's, I think, the big question. Who loves him enough to draft him somewhere in the top 40 picks? And I think that's where we believe he's going to be drafted. It's just, where is he going to go? And it's tough when you're doing a mock draft. The Colts are no longer picking at 13. The Bucs at 14 are not going to draft a quarterback. Would the Raiders pull the trigger there? The Patriots are in an interesting spot. Could we see a trade-up? The Colts are picking early second round. Could they dip their toe back into the first round and maybe take Jordan Love there? So there's so many interesting spots where he could end up, where it would make some sense. I don't think there's that obvious landing spot where, that makes too much sense for it not to happen.
How much in these conversations that you have with NFL teams going through over the years as you've been doing this, I don't know the right way to ask this, but how often do they use members of the media to throw off the scent for the other teams that may be looking at a guy?
Yeah, it happens. I think that because you have a lot of people out there that anything you tell them, they put it out there, on social media or whatever. I mean, I do things a little different because I don't consider myself, a newsbreaker. I mean, I probably talk publicly about maybe 10% of what I hear, just because I know not all of it's true, and it might not happen that way. A lot of it won't happen that way. I can tell you that. I'm not saying this is true, but I could say that the Colts love Jordan Love. They love him. And then, they end up drafting, Jake Fromm because maybe they just loved him a little bit more. It's something that in the draft season, there's a lot of talk, you hear a lot of things. And I've been doing this long enough where I have a certain, network of people that I trust that have not failed or steered me in the wrong direction before. So I trust what they say, but it does absolutely happen. Smoke screen. Stuff is purposely said or purposely put out there. And it's not just teams, it's agents. It's a lot of people who have an agenda for one reason or the other. And that helps create narratives for players, quote unquote, falling or rising. And it's kind of a fascinating development that happens this time of year.
Again, we're talking to Dane Brugler. He's an NFL draft analyst for The Athletic, and updated mock draft today that just dropped on The Athletic. And notice Jordan Love is not the only Utah State player that you have potentially getting drafted. David Woodward going in the 7th round to Washington. What do you see there?
Yeah, and honestly, whether or not Woodward gets drafted, I think just comes down to the medicals. He was a player who he was hurt in high school. He had 2 cracked vertebrae. Missed basically his entire junior year. And then when he goes to Utah State, he had a terrific 2018 season and then looked great at the start of the 2019 season. And then, unfortunately, he missed the final 6 games due to injury. So this might just be a medical pick. If the doctors sign off, I think he's getting drafted. If they don't, then it's just more complicated to see what happens with him. But you love him as a tackler. This guy is a magnet to the football. He understands football geometry. He finds a way to get to the football. Tackling machine, not going to wow you. Solid size, not great. Solid speed, not great. But I think that his ability as a tackler, his ability to break things down, trust his instincts, unlock and go. He doesn't overthink things. He understands what the offense is doing and he reacts. I think that's certainly going to help him, and it might get him a shot at the very least on special teams. But the medicals, that's going to be the key to his draft stock.
You're also really high on another linebacker from the Mountain West. That's Logan Wilson from Wyoming. And you think he's going to be trading one Cowboy uniform for another?
Yeah, I think he'd be a natural fit in Dallas with linebacker is a sneaky need for the Cowboys, and so I think Logan Wilson in the third round. I know they've shown interest in Logan Wilson, and so I think in the third round that would make some sense. That pairing, I don't think Logan Wilson gets talked about enough. This is a player who is a corner in high school. He moves to linebacker when he goes to Wyoming, and he turns into a 4-year starter, 3-year team captain, had 421 tackles in his career. He's just a guy that is easy to like. I mean, he might be the best tackler in the draft. He has such a high batting average as a tackler because of his breakdown skills, his understanding of how to wrap and finish. He can drop in space. He can blitz. There's so much about him I like. I don't know that he's ever going to be a Pro Bowl type of player, but I think he's just going to be a solid linebacker for a long time in the NFL. He should be a day 2 player, so he should be off the board somewhere. Not Thursday night, not Saturday, but on Friday, that second, third round range.
Hey, we've heard a lot about. We've already discussed this deep group of quarterbacks in this year's draft, but we're also hearing a lot about a very deep, very talented group of wide receivers in this year's draft. And how does that maybe push down some other categories of players that maybe you would normally see get drafted a little bit higher in the draft?
Well, and it might be receiver as well. And what I mean by that is a team, say they're picking in the first round, they really like, a Justin Jefferson or a Brandon Ayuk or a Denzel Mims, but they know that the receiver position will stretch a little bit. So maybe they draft an offensive tackle in the first or an edge rusher because they know that receiver, they can find one that they like in the second or third round. So because of that, and just the sheer volume of talent, we're going to see first-round receivers go in the second-round receivers go in the third, and so on and so on. And I think there's going to be plenty of teams that get really good value in this receiver class because of that. On average, we have about 12 and a half receivers go in the top 100 picks. Good luck trying to limit a list of 12 names that belong in the top 100. It's hard to do that with 15. I mean, there are 20 receivers in this class that have an argument to go in the top 100 picks, but they're not all going to fit in there. And I think this receiver class is really interesting that way. Who's going to decide to go receiver early? Who's going to decide to try and wait and gamble a little bit to find value later on? Just such a stacked position. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Dane, with COVID-19 affecting as much as it has the sports world, do you think that college football and NFL will start on time, or there'll be a delay?
You can only hope, I mean, I don't think we know what next week looks like. And so it's hard to say. I sure hope so. I don't know, what the new normal is going to be in this country. You hope that I think sports is a big part of that, in terms of getting us back to some semblance of normal. And so for that to happen, there has to be sports. And, you just hope that we get there. And will it start with baseball this summer? Will the NBA look to do something? I think that those sports are going to have to make a decision before college football, and so that might be dependent on what those other sports decide to do. That's kind of how college football is going to take a look. And so, we don't know enough about what next week's going to bring, so I can't even imagine thinking about, 3-4 months from now, but I sure hope so, because it's, aside from, my personal bias about, this is what I do for a living and, job-wise, career-wise, you just don't know. So obviously, I hope football is back, but, I just could not imagine a fall in this country without college football. It'd be really unfortunate.
Hey, by the way, you're a barbecue expert. What's your go-to on the barbecue pit grill?
I'm a beef ribs or brisket. Just all you need, salt and pepper. Add, let the beef sing, and add some smoke to that baby, and you do it right. There's nothing better. It's just that's as good as you're going to get. Put it on low and slow.
Keep it simple, huh?
That's absolutely. You let the beef be the star of the dish, and just crank up the flavor a little bit with that salt and pepper. No sauce needed. I just add some smoke to it, and low and slow. Let it go. If you're doing a brisket, then let it go for 14, 15 hours if you need to, or longer. Beef ribs, it's a little easier. Doesn't take as long, but man, the payoff so good.
Man, my mouth's already salivating.
Now I'm hungry.
Salivating for food and salivating for college football. And thank you so much, Dane Brugler, the Athletic NFL Draft Analyst. Really, really good stuff, Dane. Thank you so much, and we'll do it again soon.
All right, anytime. Thanks, guys.